it's an opportunity for me also to give back and to share how the spirit of breath transformed my life and still does every day. If we go way back, in utero, we as fetus, our life is given to us through our mother's breath and through the placenta and the connection to her energies. We actually begin practice breathing in utero. It's been shown now that we're exercising those muscles already, even before birth. And for me in utero, there was a time when I knew I wanted to come out. And so even though my parents took me to the hospital and the doctor wasn't there and my mother was told to hold back, until the doctor come. Well, apparently I wasn't having any of it because I came out without medical assistance or anything. I just knew that life was awaiting and I was ready. And even though I was raised in a fairly suppressive tradition of you have to adapt yourself to religious conformity, and there's nothing bad about religion whatsoever. I believe it's a wonderful gift in our world, but somehow when it gets interpreted as to mostly suppression, then it can limit our sense of aliveness and freedom. So my aliveness and freedom came out through playing sports, because that's where you could go for it and express yourself and then move. And in sports, getting one's wind, as they called it, meant using breath to help sustain you, to play well in whatever sport you're involved in. And so there was training way back, even as a child, in terms of how to use breath to sustain my activity and to do well in it. Well, actually, there are many ways that breath is taught, and even in sports, in coaching, you are taught how to work with your breath in track or in any sport for that matter. And of course, that learning continues to grow in its nuances, in its activity. And so even in top level of sports today, people are learning what we're teaching in breath work. But the formal study of breath didn't come to me until after I'd gone through all sorts of educational programming, all the way to being a clinical psychologist with a PhD. Well, 2 days after getting the degree, I quit. What I mean is I was realized I didn't want to spend my life helping, because I felt I was called to help people. But I didn't want to do it as a talking head, simply using mental tools in order to help change people's lives. I knew something was missing there. So my wife and I got on an airplane and went to Africa. I knew I had to either go into full-time psychoanalysis or maybe go to Africa. I don't know why those two choices, but Africa was the one that we went, because it was like getting back to the earth, getting back to the roots of our civilization. And there in the desert in Africa was an enlightenment. It was like, oh, come back and get your hands in the earth, breathe with the earth, feel the earth's aliveness. And we came back and we had many gardens, and now, but during that time, I also discovered growth technique called bioenergetics. It was picked up, and all of a sudden, here was Alexander Lowen, who also was trained as a professional healer, a psychiatrist actually, but he knew his wife was a physical therapist, and he actually revolutionized the whole concept of psychiatry with using breath and exercise and the careful study of how the human being develops over the first 6 years of life, seeing the challenges that they faced and the decisions that they made, and how these decisions were incorporated in their body and often lasted throughout their life, becoming an astute observer of just how people breathe. And of course, how they saw life, how they talked, but he just didn't have a verbal interaction with them. He would watch their bodies. He would watch their breathing mechanism, and he would assist them to release holding patterns. I'd come home again. this for me, I said, okay, now I'm ready to go back into a helping profession, because this not only works for me, but this is what I want to share with the world. That was like the birth of what eventually came to be what I called therapeutic breathwork. And now there are so many different forms of breath work. For thousands of years, we know the Chinese have over 3,000 breathing techniques. So this is nothing new under the sun, but we do add some new things in the field of breath work, and that is, it's not just the guru which can support other people. We have breath work is a community-based movement now. We're learning how to share with one another. And through this study of the developmental stages, we recognize, it's not a one-size breath that we're teaching. People have developed certain holding patterns. And if we recognize these holding, not judge them, criticize them, this isn't about diagnoses of who's sick and who's healthy. What it is about, though, is what decisions did we make when we, in utero, in the first year of our life, when we began to walk, when we began to move around the environment, when our sexuality was developing. What were those developmental stages that were critical to everyone on the planet? This is where we, in our teaching and in our education, because breath workers are also educators. It's not just about come to me, I will help you breathe easy and now go home. And no, we're teaching people to self-direct. We're giving them an education in terms of how to find their breath work. I say, I can't teach you breath work. I can set up the stage for you to discover your own breath work. Now, along the way, there is science involved. Science is just the study of what patterns tend to organize, and so we can learn from one another. It's not like everyone is so completely unique that we can't learn from one another. Yes, we can learn, okay, so here's something that people face when they're coming into new situations in life, and they're very afraid and they feel frozen. And so they go through life like a deer in headlights. All right, well, we call that psychic sensitive, because even though at that stage they have left their body, so to speak, because it wasn't safe, they were in a very spiritual realm, in a mental realm often, and they developed compensating skills. Now, the secret is not to erase all that and just get back in your body. No, the secret here is this thing that was originally perhaps a trauma even, has led to a person developing certain sensitivities. Now, as we help them get back into their bodies and feel comfortable being there, they also have this psychic sensitivity. We go back to basics. And this is why it's so important that you're not treating everyone the same. You and I might be very comfortable with breathing fully and breathing fast and breathing long. But what I would ask someone to do as a full breath might not look to others like they're hardly breathing at all. So we start where people are at. We start with that sensitivity. Okay, here's what we can do now. How can we build on this? Breath by breath, incrementally. And so we're working with the body, but we're also working with the mind, how they're thinking, because their thoughts have been changed by that sense of fear. So we work with the body in terms of how to incrementally increase the volume and the depth of their breathing, at the same time changing their thoughts and how they move. And so we've got several different sources of change that are coming in. Meanwhile, they're also connecting with their spirit and that sense of, I am trusted and I am loved in the world. That, of course, we know is the core of it all. Okay. But now I'm talking about that psychic sensitive first stage, but there is the empathetic nurturing stage that comes after that. In other words, okay, I'm safe enough to be alive, but how much is there for me in the world? Are my parents so wrapped up with all their own issues that now I have to take care of them in order for me to survive? I become very empathetic, very tuned in to other people's needs. Each stage we go along, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. We preserve the strengths and even build upon them. But we come back to reinforcing the foundation and the fears that that kept them in a holding pattern. Each stage along the way, the inspirational leader comes next when we start to move out into the world. And is that a threat to the people around us? So we learn to rise above our feelings so we're not controlled and we're in charge. These people are great in the world of business and politics and so on, as long as they can surrender and be to their own vulnerability. Because what they've learned often in the unintegrated state, it's not safe to have feelings. It's not safe to show any vulnerability or someone's going to control you. After, again, coming to integration means I can still be a leader, but I'm in touch with other people's feelings and needs, not just about getting my will and imposing it on other people. If people take on that style and they can attract a lot of attention and followers, but they can't go home and all of a sudden be with their family. They're still giving orders. After that inspirational leader, then comes a stage where we become much more fine-tuned to our feelings and our sensitivities. You see, we're often taught, these are the feelings that are okay in this household, but no, we don't have those feelings. For example, in my life, we didn't have anger in our house. Oh, we had sarcasm and humor, which you recognize is what happens when anger is suppressed. It comes out indirectly, passive aggressive. And so when I first went to, I was studying to be a psychologist, and I went to a group and I started responding as I did in my family, and I was brought up short. People didn't think I was very funny. They were offended. And I said, what's wrong with these people? I was totally out of touch with my anger. So it took me a lot of intense getting back to safety in my feeling body. Before then, I was split between the good me, which was always expressing these kind of feelings, and the bad me that had feelings like anger or even sadness. And so the healing then comes into becoming the authentic me, which has this whole variety of feelings, but not being controlled by them or only safe when I'm suppressing them. They're a form of intelligence, vast intelligence that our culture becomes afraid of because feelings have been used to manipulate others or to get sick with, because I've suppressed them so much. And so this whole stage now of what I call steadfast supportive is about learning, yes, I can adapt. I can be a great healer. You want to have these kind of people on your team because they've learned to adapt to anything and accept that they can overgive then. And they're always looking on how to please and recognize that they're not really authentic. in terms of pleasing themselves. And so they've been like squashed. And they're still living, and their life is like a struggle. It's like through a morass. And so there's not, the joy has been taken out of it. Oh, they've learned to be good helpers and good supporters of other people, but the sense of freedom and joy is like squashed out. When they integrate and they come back to learning, yes, I have anger, but anger is just life energy with the thought I'm not getting what I want. Now I can get what I want more directly here. When people might start looking for, well, Alexander Lowen, he doesn't talk about steadfast, supportive, or empathetic nurturing. He was still coming from the medical pathology that he was taught. He was still brilliant, and he had observations. It's just that he had some old labels, and they tended to focus on the unintegrated parts. So they were talking about schizoid and masochistic and psychopathic. And it's like, no, that's not what we want to emphasize here. We don't want to emphasize the unintegrated. We want to emphasize the strengths and get out of the sick versus healthy and get on. No, there's a continuum. Not a continuum that just certain people have. We all have. We all have these continuums. We've all made decisions along the way, including the what I call gender balanced, which comes next, and then the energetic grounded. We all have each of these, and we all make decisions, and we all have strengths in it. Now, us as helpers, as breath workers, we're looking at, oh, okay, in general, people with the psychic sensitivity and the empathetic nurturing, they have difficulty taking a full inhale. Yeah. It's like, oh, the fear in life is, and so we're assisting them to feel more alive and self-supporting. People who are the inspirational leader and steadfast supportive, exhale right on the button. It's like, no, I've got to hold people away. I'm keeping my chest out here. I can't surrender. I can't let go to my vulnerability or to my variety of feelings, which I've been labeled bad in my life. And so, and then with the next two, it's the balance of inhale and exhale, the gender balanced and the energetic grounded, the balancing of the inhale and the exhale. So we come into the stage of life, into the third to the fifth year, where we're beginning to identify more with male or female characteristics. And this is not into the culturally identified given roles, regardless of who we are or whether we are identifying with a male or female culturally given identity, we still have a natural sense of how we express ourselves. And is that a threat in our environment? Is our feminine side a threat? And so the only thing that's given support is aggressiveness, yang energy. Or on the other hand, was our yang energy a threat in some way? And so we're not the same kind of passive aggressive as the steadfast supportive beforehand. There's a lot of strength in there, and we can express ourselves quite well, but we still do it in a way that's safer for us, in a way that doesn't set us up as a target for the judgment of being the type of male that is going to be a threat to other authority figures. So we learn to adapt and to create ourselves to be safe in the cultural, in the environment we're at, but sometimes those adaptations limit us. When we're integrated in the gender balanced, we have the best of both worlds. We can express our yang energy, our yin energy in full force. And what was a threat to the outside, we're not making a threat inside of us. Yeah, I say we walk down the road of life on two legs. There's the yang, we have goals, we have things that we want to accomplish, our to-do list. And then we have acceptance of how we are already, not how we're going to be after we get that certificate or that degree. Acceptance of the beauty and the magnificence of life as it is right now. Now, if we're going down the road of life with yang, 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 or just, oh, relax, take it easy, it's like hopping on one leg. That balance in the two. And then coming to a comfort with our both sexual orientation as well as gender identity, we look at intimacy and how can we be safe now in a long-term relationship with others. This doesn't necessarily we have to get married or live with a partner. It's intimacy even with ourselves and with life. Yeah. And if there has been a wounding, if there has been a decision that I have to protect myself, I have to protect my heart. I'm a very energetic person and I'm very successful, and I can pick them up and lay them down with the best of them, and I can be attractive. But when it comes to commitment or a long-term relationship, oh, not so much. And then everything is a competition. Everything is, how many relationships can I have? How often can I be sexual? Or completely turning it off at all. And then just, I'm the ice queen, no one gets close to me, this is energetic grounded, and also open to long-term loving and caring relationships. I'm not always having to perform. I'm not always having to be in a production. I'm not always having to seek out things that break through my armoring, because I go through life with like a breastplate of armoring that no one is going to hurt me again. I am not going to be betrayed. I am not going to betray myself by surrendering to love or surrendering to anything in life. And so as a breath worker, sometimes people will come in with this style and it's like, what's their problem? I'd like to be them. They're driving a Ferrari, they're making big money, but they're not happy. There's something that's always driving them. There's something that prevents them from truly letting down and accepting the love of the universe, the love of other people. They have energy and they can be grounded, which makes them successful in life and in the world. And they're not afraid of their feelings. They'll tell you right off. They're very resourceful. But in terms of being able to stop the performance and be vulnerable and open and not needing extreme situations like driving a motorcycle race or being the top performer on Broadway or being, of course, that's the extremes, but it could be in your own neighborhood, could be in your own career, whatever it is, that you learn how to balance, again, that heart with your head and your genitals. It's like when the heart is frozen up, then it all goes into sexual performance or mental, intellectual performance. This is what I consider my contribution and our school's contribution, our teachers in therapeutic breathwork. So I have over 400 free YouTube videos. You can tune in, and I have a playlist which has all these things on body themes on there. And if you do want more study, we have a full program that's Global Professional Breathwork Alliance certified program of study. You can either study and get certified through our school, or just take some things from our school and other schools and combine them together in terms of your education. Key here, though, that I don't want to overlook, what's transformed my life is the daily practice. It is every day coming to that point of surrender and going to the timeless place. Then I'm living in a universe which is supporting me breath by breath. I'm walking with the spirit of breath as a companion, not a tool, not a technique, not something I use when I just need to relax, not something I use when I have a trauma. Oh yes, breathwork is great for all of those things. But what it's coming to is to an authentic way of being in life. That is what's transformed my life, in truth. It's having this as a companion every moment. So walking with breath awareness, because breath work will take you to a different state of consciousness. And this is what gets people attracted right away. Holy smokes, I did a breathwork session and I feel high as a kite. I feel free, but then of course the next day, it's business as usual. So I got to do more of it. So truly, what we're coming to is not just getting people high or in a high state, but in a steady state. This is where community comes in. And this is where working with a group of people over a period of time, it becomes a way of life, a whole level of consciousness rather than just a state of consciousness. Her latest book is Breakthrough with Breathwork. And it talks about levels of consciousness. It talks about a way to bring breathwork to people, again, not as a one size fits all, but it has all of these different body themes in it, as well as an approach to breathwork. My fourth book called Breathing in Light and Love. That's all of these things in it. I've taken it much further with the latest book, but this is an excellent way to start. Breathing in Light and Love. Thank you so much for opening this up to the world. Bye-bye.